exhausted by thy painful magics. Utilizing mine own powers, I have thus ensnared thee within the very bowels of mine own mind prison, that thou shalt not further thy nefarious endeavors. Escape shall be naught but a fool's hope, for my mind prison doth reside deep within a realm I created, where thy sorceries and thy endeavors are shackled most severely. Venture not to leave this place, for such efforts shall prove futile. With keen interest, I shall watch as thee struggle in vain.
Dungeons of Blood and Dream is a recent dungeon crawler roguelike that released in early access about a week ago on May 27th of 2024. It's got amazing lo-fi, PSX-esque graphics and a great soundtrack that sets an impressive tone at a frenetic pace. The combat is fast, fun, and challenging, the progression system's interesting, and the story's intriguing, but I found it had usability issues along with some jank, as expected of an early release title. But for how unique it is, it's hard not to recommend this game for any dungeon crawler fan. The gist of Dungeons of Blood and Dream is that it's a psychedelic dungeon crawler roguelike with an emphasis on first-person melee combat. The structure of the game is very similar to other roguelikes with typical Isaac-style room-to-room exploration with a boss at the end of each level. The melee combat is the main thing that puts it aside from similar games in its genre, being a fast-paced spin on something like Kingsfield or Baroque. You've got two directions to swing, dictated by your direction of movement, along with two attack keys bound to right and left click, with an additional, very Dark Messiah-esque kick on your X key, giving you a total of 4 attacks. You also have a Q ability that uses the eye in your hand to do various different spells. At the start of the game, it's an invisibility spell, but there's various other ways to change what it does. The animations of your attacks can be cancelled into each other while either swapping guards or alternating left and right click, and allows you to attack significantly faster. On your middle mouse key, you can cycle through a number of runes which allow you to combine and cast spells. I understand the reasoning for this casting system, as it allows natural discovery of new spells. You find different rune combinations throughout the game in things called blood pools, but the difficulty in using it combined with the health cost meant I was rarely using spells throughout the game and pretty much solely relying on melee combat. Despite this, the spells are pretty unique. One summons rats to attack enemies and another one ignites all the enemies around you, but I felt that they weren't terribly impactful, though that could be down to user error rather than a problem with the game. Overall, the combination of attacks in Dungeons of Blood and Dream allows for great combos and almost feels like dancing against the enemies. It's a really cool combination of vying for position, poking in and out of each other's range. I mean, the combination of attacks, enemy AI, and movement, it's just all a great combat system. There is notably no dodge in the game, so any avoiding of enemy attacks is going to come down to solely player movement. There are also rings which take the place of items from other roguelikes, and they feel very Eternal Ring-like, which is one of the older FromSoft games. And depending on which finger and hand you put them on, have different effects. Some negative, but most positive. The same can't be said for potions, which seem to give positive and negative stat changes on about a 50-50 chance, and the stat changes do last your entire run. You won't start the game knowing what effects each potion has, but they have different smells, which does dictate what effect they give you, and you can either write it down in your really cool blood notebook, or after you drink the same potion enough times, your character will learn what it does. Throughout your runs, you'll find different NPCs that will guide you through different dialogue to unlock items by asking different questions. I believe some unlock different locations. There's also a shop that allows you to purchase rings and different weapons. Each of the weapons does play pretty much identically, but they have minor different stats. Some swing faster, some are better at stabbing, some are better at thrusting, some have different ranges. It's not a huge difference, but it's nice to have. The design of all the NPCs is like a notable part of the game. It looks fantastic. All of them look super unique and have just amazing designs, great usage of colors and shape design. I mean, from a visual standout, in a game that already looks great, the NPC designs are fantastic. After you get through a run, you get back to your dungeon cell with a number of idols, some letters on the wall, and of course, a bed. It is a dungeon of dreams after all. You also have a mirror that allows you to talk to yourself. I'm not exactly sure what lore purpose it has, but it gives you some interesting dialogue options and allows you to unlock extra items. You can use the idols for permanent upgrades to your stats, minor stat boosts like health and attack damage. The mirror, as previously stated, unlocks items and the numbers to input his name, though I won't get into that in this video since I'm not sure it's fully incorporated and I haven't gotten through that segment of the game. I believe it's some sort of ARG thing. It's a limited but functional home base. It's a far cry from something like Hades, but that would really be silly to expect from, I believe, a game that was developed by one person. Overall, the gameplay loop is pretty simple with a few upgrades and similar feeling runs, but the core mechanics of the game make up for that and keep the game feeling fun for shorter play sessions, though I wouldn't play it for a huge amount of time. I think under an hour is probably the best play session time for this game. The hit reg felt a little off during the early days of the game, but I believe the game has received a recent patch because hit reg feels a lot better now, though it could simply be me improving at the game because this is very much a skill-based game. The visual style appears to be the main selling point of the game, with striking art direction reminiscent of indie contemporaries like Hylux 2 and Cruelty Squad. Large polygons and unfiltered textures abound, and, aided by its unique soundtrack, create an amazing atmosphere that ropes you into the game. It's a bit easier on the eyes than something like Cruelty Squad, but the lack of adjustable FOV, view bob, etc. may put off some motion-sick players. The art itself is very nice, with flashy psychedelic color schemes and carefully crafted character models. The UI is a bit cluttered, but I imagine that was a deliberate decision to bring to mind the dungeon crawlers of the 90s. I think it's not too far removed from reality that it becomes entirely abstract, but still looks like no other game I can think of, especially in the roguelike dungeon crawler niche. The story seems to be a relatively simple one, on the surface at least. You are what's called a blood wizard, and you're stuck in the mind of a powerful magician for some magical transgression that you wrought in the past. Though you don't remember what it was, and you've got to escape the mind prison. There are a number of cryptic tablets of dialogue throughout the game, along with notes dropped from bosses that I assume have something to do with an overarching narrative, but either I didn't look hard enough or the narrative isn't incorporated yet due to the game's relatively early development. There are a couple different endings I won't spoil in this video, with two being much easier to find than one other, which is part of like an ARG, I believe, and I haven't been able to figure out the third ending. The other two are relatively simple, good and bad endings though. It's intriguing, but as of now I believe it needs some time to be developed, or I just need to read a little closer. In conclusion, Dungeons of Blood and Dream is an incredibly solid game with tight controls, difficult yet engaging combat, and some of the best art direction I've seen in an indie game in a long time. It doesn't have a great deal of content at the moment, and at $15.99, it's a bit of a steep ask for the amount of gameplay it gives. Though I am confident it'll be expanded on, and will shortly be an amazing value proposition.